In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
From the Vikings of Norway to my home down south to Washington, D.C., I've been around. I've seen it all, and I've come out on top. You better beware, for all you know, the bell tolls for you. Enter the bell tower or watch your step.
Good evening. Welcome to For Whom the Bell Tolls. I have with me again this evening Dr. Randy Arrington, because we are doing an apples to apples comparison tonight, as promised. How are you tonight, Dr. Arrington?
I'm here, and I'm honored to be here. However, I think I figured you out. You're just having me on so that all the Twitter vitriol, that ugliness that comes after your show is directed at me and not you. So I figured that out.
Yes, absolutely. Why not?
Well, I take the blunt of the hits for you and for JD and Stacy, but I'm speak the truth, endure the consequences, and I'm ready to go.
Right. Yeah, and I gotta say we sound kind of quiet. I gotta check what I don't know. Let us know in the chat room if you can hear us very well or not, because it sounded kind of low on my end. Yeah, maybe it's that Skype problem that you're having. Maybe a little bit. So hopefully everybody can hear us. Hey, Ron, can you hear us? So I see my captain, Ron, the Dread Pirate Ron, is in the levels are fine. Thanks, Ryan. So glad everybody can hear us tonight, and we are really happy to be here to complete the story of the executable file that was released by GoSec Group. So we're going to get into that in a little bit, but first of all, you're doing good, Dr. Arrington.
I'm doing fine.
Right.
I'm getting used to this radio type of communication. It's a good medium. And hopefully we got a lot of people out there that are listening and can get educated with the truth.
Yeah, I hope you're getting used to it, because we do an awful lot of it, and we do an awful lot of it together. Because, like I said, whenever, yes. Right, when I need somebody to take the heat for me, or
all right, I'll take the heat.
Right, exactly.
Just for you.
Yeah, I know you always have my back, and that's what I love about you. One of the many things that I love about you.
No, I have your 6.
I'm sorry. I got to speak. Pilot speak, right? I
yes,
got a naval
lingo.
Not pilot, naval
right.
aviator speak.
Naval aviator, is
right?
Correct.
Exactly, right. Especially when I'm talking to my strike leader. So it's been a really crazy week, and since you are a pilot trainer, and you work with this program, let's do a little. You like to throw me curveballs. I'm going to throw you one.
Okay.
Can we talk just a little bit about the missing Afghans? And I'm not talking about blankets.
Yeah, those 2 trainee pilots from Afghanistan were training at Moody Air Force Base in Georgia, just down in Valdosta, Georgia, a little south where I'm living in Peachtree City.
A little.
And they were and they were down there by the Florida border, Georgia border. But they were training.
We call
in
it
the
Valduki, by the way. Our nickname for Valdosta is Valduki. It's one of my favorite Georgia nicknames.
Oh,
yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, you're an old Georgia girl anyway, So
that's right.
But they were trained in the A-10, the Warthog, and I've flown mock combat against the A-10 when I was flying the A-7 there in New Orleans Naval Air Station. Great airplane. It's one of the airplanes that and I call them ragheads. I'm sorry if that's offensive to you, but that's what we called them when we were, going against them. But the people in the Middle East there that are our enemies, that's one of the airplanes they were really afraid of because it's a tank killer. It's a big old airplane. It's a slow airplane, maybe 275, 80 knots, straight wing. It's got the same engine on it as the S-3 does that we flew in the Navy as an anti-submarine attack jet.
Right.
But it can move really, really well, and it's basically a flying gun. It's a 30 millimeter Gatling gun cannon in the nose of that A-10 Warthog, and it's designed to take out tanks, and it does the job. So when they see that thing flying, they're pretty much afraid of that. But that's what they were training in from the Afghan Air Force, and they've gone missing. We had some missing guys. Has it been like 6 or 8 months ago? And they found, I think it was 6 of them that went missing.
From New Jersey, and they found them at the Canadian border.
They found them at the Canadian border, and then they gave one of them, I think, asylum. But we don't know exactly yet. We're not supposed to speculate, but it doesn't look good, at least at this point, to have these guys disappear, because you and I were talking offline, I think it was yesterday, and we have, and my son, officer in the Army, they're over there training these guys, Iraq and Afghanistan, and they'll turn on them. They'll turn on the American trainers and shoot them with the very gun they gave them 3 weeks before and kill them. So it's not out of the question that these 2 young Afghan pilots have absconded from Moody Air Force Base and could be anywhere. They could be up in your neck of the woods there in South Carolina. Oh, I'm sorry, North Carolina.
I wish you'd stop doing that to me.
Well, you're a Georgia girl, though. You're a Georgia girl. But they could be anywhere, and that's why we need to hook up with Slickery Trigger and some of these other guys that are our friends in the virtual world.
I've already applied for my Texas passport.
Well, and you got we'll go to Texas, live there in the Lone Star State, but we got to be armed, people. You have to have a personal defense system for you, whether that is a baseball bat ain't going to cut it. You got to go out and get yourself a handgun and be prepared and learn how to use it, because the bad guys are here on American soil. They're here in the lower 48, and we have to be prepared. If you remember back, Lou, our first show on Offsiders with Dr. A was about sheep, wolves, and sheepdogs.
Yep.
I don't want you to be a sheep. Most of us are. But you got to transition and be a sheepdog, because the wolves are at our door and they will eat you without mercy. Trust Dr. A in this one subject. Okay. And I don't want you good people to get hurt.
Okay, well, I'm expecting a stinger in the mail from you for Christmas.
Okay, all right.
Okay, send me my stinger.
What's Slick going to send you from his...
Slick can send me a holster.
Oh, okay, very nice. Very nice.
He can send me a holster, because Rebel Road Tactical is where Rebel Road Tactical will fulfill all your holster needs. There's your plug, Slick.
This is serious stuff. They're out there.
It is.
And they want to kill us infidels. And you know what I think about Islam? It's not a religion. It masquerades as a religion. It's a totalitarian ideology. It's brutal control over human behavior and thought, masquerading as religion. And I don't want you to get hurt.
Well, and I think with that said, and between the two of us, it's funny because I've never been accused of being PC. Well, unless I'm doing PR. But between the two of us, I'm the more PC one, and that's a strange place for me to be.
Didn't you work in PR for the blood bank?
No, a disaster.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Actually, in the end, I did everything. By the end of it, I was doing everything because of the huge territory I had. So I did a little bit of everything. So I did work in blood services, but most of what I did was disaster, which, I'm thinking might come in handy. But it's really scary. The scariest thing to me about these 2 guys being missing is they've been training since February on how to fly a Warthog, what the ordinances are. I mean, tell us a little bit about everything that you learn about that particular aircraft, and we're talking about our primary tank killer. This is our tank killer.
That was exactly, and the tanks they'd be killing over there are our tanks that we left behind. I've never understood that. When we go to war and we win, hopefully that's what we do every time. Americans want to win all the time, according to Patton, and then we leave the stuff behind for anybody and everybody to steal it and use it, and that's what ISIS is using right now. When they stroll into town with their little black flag and their finger up in the air, they're riding American tanks.
Yes.
And that's, to me, is a disgusting thing. I don't like seeing that.
No. I know. And what they did to the Humvees, I mean, they made them look very Mad Max.
Yeah.
I mean, they've Mad Maxed all the Humvees that they stole. It's crazy.
Well, you know what's going on now, and I'm sure Comedianon, who's in our romper room, one of those honorable men that are trying to disrupt ISIS using technology on the internet, ISIS is training pilots in Libya. Thank you, Mrs. Clinton, for that. They're training them in full motion simulators. Like I train the Air Force guys here in Atlanta to go to war. And they're training these guys. And they're becoming a bigger and bigger threat every single day. And that knucklehead in the White House, he's one of them, and he's not going to take him out. We can't get this guy out of the White House soon enough, Lou. We just can't. He's got to go. No offense intended. I'm telling you the truth. Yes, I'll endure the consequences. But he even said it. I am one of you. He said that to the Muslims. He is one of them.
Yes.
People keep saying all the time, is this guy incompetent? I say no.
He's very competent.
Depends on your perspective.
Yeah, he's doing exactly what he wants to do. Right.
What he said he would do.
Right.
And that's why these guys, Ghost Sec and Ghost Sec Group and the Anons are extremely valuable for what they're doing, because they're engaging in cyber warfare against this heinous enemy of the United States, and they're taking down these sites daily.
Yeah.
And because of you, I get to do some research on this and learn about the dark net and some of this other stuff, and it's really been fun for me to learn about this. And these guys are true American heroes, people. Trust Dr. A on this. These Anons, GroupSec, GoSec.
GoSec, yeah. And they, the volunteers, and we've talked about this, and I have a natural affinity because of my volunteer history for guys that volunteer to do this, and they volunteer their time, and nobody's paying them, and they won't take money. So, that's where a lot of my affinity for GoSec comes from. But the other thing, that I really wanted to ask you about is what they learn about those planes. They learn about all of the ordinances. They learn about how they're loaded.
They learn the specs of the airplane, what the airplane can and can't do. And I can tell you that because I've done dogfights against them. And they're a hard airplane to beat because they have a big old fat straight wing and they fly slow. Most of the fighters, talking about F-18s and 15s and 16s, the 22s and 35s, they don't want to get into a slow speed fight. They want to kill you 20 miles away, using their technology to kill you. But eventually you get into a slow speed, you can do a dogfight, and they're very hard to beat because they have such a good turning radius. So they would learn about the capabilities of the airplane, what it can and can't do as students. They would also learn all the different types of weaponry that they can load and use on the A-10 and how that works, what the ranges are, and what they're used for, what a loadout would be for a specific mission. That's very valuable intelligence they can bring back to ISIS and those people there in Syria and wherever else they're going.
Well, so I think that's my biggest concern is even if they didn't leave base to do something nefarious here on American soil, they could take the information that they have back to ISIS, and this is why the fight that GoSec is doing against the radicalization online by bringing down those Twitter accounts and bringing down and we'll get into this discussion a little bit more later, bringing down the websites that actually are used for radicalization are so important, because if they're never radicalized, if we can stop the radicalization, they are these sorts of things are not going to happen. What happened in California wouldn't have happened if those people had not been radicalized. And the FBI admitted, I believe, before Congress, wasn't it before Congress? It was in a congressional hearing, and there were actually 2 stories that came out about it. And they were trying to, I remember Catherine Herron saying on Fox that they're trying to determine which story is more accurate. But for years, this couple had been being radicalized potentially as far back as 2011, before they met, before they married, and it could be that their marriage was actually arranged by.
Right. Lou, true American patriots know the real story. Right. And that's people like you and me and these people in the chat room. They know what the real story is. The other knuckleheads out there, they want to believe so badly that Barack Hussein Obama is a good guy, that Mrs. Clinton is a good woman. They want to believe that with all their heart, but nothing is further from the truth. So they're easy to fool because they want to be fooled. We don't want to be fooled. We seek the truth. And you got these people out there, to quote Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth. We got a lot of people in this country can't handle the truth. But that's why we got to have these radio shows that talk about the truth all the time, and maybe we can convince some people what the right story is. And you're right, they were radicalized back in 2010, 2011, just waiting for this to bubble up and foment to a position where they could do certain things. The one guy, Saeed Farouk, whatever his name was, he had pictures of some of the local high schools there in California. So he was looking at high schools and
he was a health
concert
inspector.
Venues and.
He was a health inspector that went into the high schools.
They look for soft targets. You know what a soft target is? It's a criminal-free zone. It's a gun-free zone, a criminal-safe zone. That's what a soft target is.
Yeah, a gun-free zone is a criminal-safe zone.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, your president is getting ready to do some sort of an announcement through his phone and pen, executive order, on stricter background checks. I've seen people on Twitter all day long saying, if you do these things that you say you want to do, you can just bank on a revolution, a civil war in the United States.
Well, here comes Slick. I'm giving Slick like 2 minutes before he posts that in the chat room.
Good.
Yeah, it'll be like, I don't see it yet, Slick, but it'll be a minute or two, and Slick will put that very thing in the chat room because he usually does. And I would mess with Slick, to be honest with you. Actually, that's where I'm hiding out, at Slick's house, and he knows it. So there was one other thing that you told me this week that was a fascinating story that I want you to tell because it's funny and because I think Comedy will like it.
Okay,
and he probably already knows the story, the Pershing story, and the Philippines.
Oh yeah, Black Jack Pershing. Fabulous story that this. He was actually a 4-star general. West Point instructor. He was in the Philippines. Too, Grace,
by the way, this is for
what?
This is for Bacon. Go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
He was in the Philippines, running the Philippines over there for the United States as a military tribunal there, and they had some really bad Muslim uprisings that took place. By the way, people, listen to me, listen to Dr. Ray on this. The Muslims have killed more people on planet Earth than anybody of the greatest mass murderers in the history of the world. They have killed over the course of, since 700s BC or AD, about 250 million people, 250 million people, in the name of Allah and Muhammad. They are Satan's emissaries. So he had a problem over there in the Philippines, and they were doing these terrorist acts. What he did was he went out and he grabbed 50 of these jihadis, and he tied all 50 of them up to a post, an execution post. He had his marksman standing by, and he brought in about 4 of these big pigs, hogs, and he butchered them and right in front of these guys. Of course, the blood's going everywhere, and the entrails, the underbelly, the bacon, whatever. And all of his marksmen dipped every one of their rounds in the pig's blood. So they put their bullets back in the gun full of pig's blood. And then they shot and executed 49 of the 50. Then they took them off the post, dug a big hole, they buried them in the ground, and put all the pig entrails and blood, all that stuff on top of these guys, and buried them. Because that, according to their Quran and Hadith, they can't get into heaven if they come into contact with bacon, pigs. That's it's an unclean animal. And so the 50th guy, they said, we're going to spare your life. You go back and tell the rest of the world of Islam this is what is in store for them if they continue this crap. And it stopped for about 52 years. You're never, ever going to stop the Muslims. This is their calling. They'll do this forever because that's what their books, their holy books, and their to use their term, tells them, advises them, commands them to do. You can make them stop for a while they regroup, but it's here to stay. I think they're basically from Satan. I told you that, Lou.
Yeah, you did. You told me that, and it's one reason that it's so scary. It is. The interesting thing is the radicalization, and again, why GoSec is so important. The radicalization of these. My call is on hold. Are you back?
I was on. Somebody called me on the phone.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah. So the radicalization is what is making these people do this. GoSec is trying to get rid of their tools of radicalization, and this is what is so important. And there are different opinions on this, and we talked about it last week. We're going to talk about it a little bit more because we've got the difference of opinions are on the different sides between GoSec and GoSec Group. And GoSec Group kind of has one opinion of it, and GoSec has another opinion of it.
Your buddy Comedian Anon, is he in one of these groups, or has he got his own group? Comedian Anon.
Comedy is part of GoSec.
Okay, all right, I got you.
Right, and so he's in our chat room tonight. But GoSec Group is the one who gave us the answers. They were, and I'll just explain why we did it in two different parts instead of in one show. They were a little bit slower about getting their answers to us. But we didn't want to be unfair about it, and we did not want, and still don't want to be unfair about giving them their voice and their opportunity to answer the questions. In my mind, and you know me, Dr. A, in my mind, it's the fair thing to do. Everybody, it's a free speech. This is a free speech zone, and all of America is a free speech zone.
This is not a safe space?
No safe spaces here.
Right.
So we're going to give them, regardless of what anybody said, the opportunity to answer their questions, whether we agree with them or not.
Okay. All right, I like that.
And we might agree with some of their answers, or we might not agree with other answers, but we're going to read them like we did the answers from GoSec. Apples to apples. So what we don't have is the intro story. We didn't get an introduction story from them like we had from Tor. Last week, however, they did give us some of that same kind of background in the last question. So some of that will come out in the questions as well. So that's what we'll be doing tonight in the second half of the show.
Okay.
But this online fight, this cyber warfare, because of that radicalization, these people wouldn't be here. And one of the articles that we read last week said 20 Westerners a day. That's 700, more than 700 a year. We are how many years into this? We're at least 15 years into this radicalization that's been going on.
Right.
And we're at least 10 years into the online radicalization, if not more. So do the math. And these are Westerners.
Over 10,000.
I know. These are Westerners we're talking about, not people in the Middle East. So,
But they're not Americans like you described last week on the show. It was either Officer, Dr. A, or Faroon Bell Tolls. They don't have the right attitude. Being American is a frame of mind, a state of mind. It's an attitude, and they don't have it.
Yes, being American is a frame of mind. It always has been. It always will be. And we talked about. Why am I forgetting the name of the French philosopher that made the trip to America and wrote the book?
Alexis de Tocqueville.
Yeah, de Tocqueville. De Tocqueville wrote about that state of mind of American, about the state of mind to be American, and he did that shortly after America was founded. Even then, it was very much a state of mind. To this day, it is very much a state of mind. The sad thing is that fewer of us have it than, or a smaller population of the country, a smaller percentage of the country has that frame of mind than in the days when de Tocqueville wrote about America. And I think his book, the name of the book was The American Experience, or an Experience in America.
Democracy in America.
Democracy in America, thank you.
Yeah.
I had really drawn a blank on de Tocqueville, which is strange for me.
We have maybe less of a percentage, but we have more people. Obviously, there's 320 some million people, and there's more true, and I call them true conservative American patriots out there than maybe you even realize. They just need to be awakened from their sleeping giant syndrome, and they're slowly, rocks are being thrown at their bedpost right now, and they're starting to wake up, Lou. People are tired of this Islamo-communist and Mrs. Clinton's lies and the rest of these GOP, to use the P word like Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters did the other day. We're tired of these GOP people telling us that they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and it's nothing but bunk and lies. They're worried about their power. We're going to talk about that in Office Hours with Dr. A Sunday about what's going on, why these people aren't taking down this president in all his lawlessness.
Right, exactly. Why so many people are just along for the ride, but we know it's about power and power and money.
Exactly.
And we'll get into that. So
I wish these Anons, I wish Committee Anon was around, the GoSec and GoSec group was around to take down the website that Mrs. Clinton was using for her, private email. They could have done something with her.
Right, really. Yeah, they don't. They call them. We talked about they call them right wing hackers because they don't hack government, and so they wouldn't do that. That's not something that they would do because remember they're good guys. But I would like to maybe see what they find. And speaking of Committee, by the way, he really liked your Pershing story. So we're going to cut to break a little bit early, and we're going to play a Bat by popular demand Book of Beaker because Bob needed a week off. But it's the NSA version. It's short. We're going to play it going into break because it might be my favorite reading from the Book of Beaker yet. And we are still celebrating the sunsetting of that program, hoping that it never comes back. So we're going to cut to break, and we're going to come back and spend a full 30 minutes or more on the answers from GoSec Group.
A reading from the Book of Beaker, the Overlord's Prayer. Big brother, who art in cyberspace, incessant be thy pain. Thy fearsome thumb to press on some far more than it does on others. We relinquish this day our metadata, and we endure your constant trespasses. As we misgive thou for thine actions incense us. And leave us not our liberty castrated, nor on our ass go medieval. For thine is the Fourth Amendment to break forever and ever. Amen. This has been a reading from the Book of Beaker.
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level, or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
Wondering why you're up early with us on a Sunday morning making a cocktail? News lately got you drinking? Hungover from the mainstream media by Sunday? We are, and we got you covered.
We sure do. We got your hangover cure for those weekly news blues. So sit back, top off your mimosa, and add some Baileys to that coffee.
Take a match to your copy of the New York Times. Light, funny, and oh yeah, news with booze.
and a lot of laughter.
Welcome to Bloody Marys and Broadsheets.
Abolish the IRS. Take all 125,000 IRS agents and put them on our southern border.
That's us. That's right. Gotta love this American ride. Both ends of the ozone burning. Funny how the world keeps turning. Look, Mom, no hands. I love this American ride. Gotta love this American ride.
Okay, I just got a reminder that I need to show some love to Commander Xavier, because he's another one of my favorites. He's my bro, and we love him too. So, hey, Zave, we love you. And that's he is my buddy. So, you know I wouldn't get out of this show without saying how much I love you, man. So, let's get into what the Ghost Set group had to say about the questions. The exact same questions were put to them about the executable program that they released, and we are going to read the questions to remind you of what we asked and read their answers word for word. And then, Randy, we're going to let you do some commentary on it, because I know you've had these for a while and you've probably been able to do a little research, and let's just go. So
Okay.
our first question was, anonymous affiliates don't typically use Windows, so why did you choose an EXE program? To be honest, this is the answer. To be honest, this tool wasn't built for anonymous, although they are more than welcome to use it. There's a whole community of people out there who are just now starting to discover this underworld of activists fighting ISIS. Thanks in large part to the intense media focus on anonymous and ghost security groups since the Paris attacks. They may not know how to flag a YouTube video or report a group to Facebook or an account to Twitter. They may want to help in some way, and for a simple app is all they need to get motivated to do something. This tool was something now the first part of that was very similar to what GhostSec told us.
Correct, yes.
Right. This tool was something one of our guys had been developing as an internal tool for the team to use. It helps us to organize the submissions by categorizing them based on the host of the site reported. If used properly, all the Facebook links get deposited in one location, the Twitters in another, Instagrams in another, and so on. The guy is a C+ coder, not a web guy, so he had been coding it as a desktop app instead of going in and coding our website to do it, to do the filtering and sort it through Java, PHP, which is a lot of technical talk, but basically, to explain that a little bit, is he was a desktop app developer and not a web developer, so he was developing the tool as a desktop app. It ended up being an EXE file because of that, basically. Because it was his skill set. Coders love to tinker, and this was a labor of love that he'd been working on behind the scenes. Recently he asked, do you think I should make this available publicly? And of course the response was, why not? It's just another way for people to report online activity. Can they just copy and paste the link into a web form? Sure. The more options you put out there, the better your odds of getting people or getting the public to participate. If the tools get used, we could add additional reporting options so that the information is sent to the databases of all the major teams, including other GhostSec teams, Op Paris, Op ISIS, and whoever else can use the information.
You realize that one of the biggest reasons that we eventually beat Germany, Italy, and Japan in World War II was because of the code breakers. And that's the way I view these GhostSec guys, the ANOS, whatever you want to call them. They're code breakers, and they're out there in that dark net, which we found out last week is the sub-internet. It's below the regular internet. It's usually where those heinous child pornographers hang out and that sort of thing. But the ISIS people are using the dark net to foment their radicalization, their recruitment process. And so that's why these guys from the different names, whatever you want to call them, anons, are very valuable because they can help not only stop these websites from operating and bringing out the 20 per day recruits and radicalizing them, but they can help break these codes so that we know what's going on. And once we finally get somebody in the White House that will actually fight this war the way it's supposed to be fought and not just be on their side, then these code breakers is what I want to call them, are going to be really, really valuable because then we'll know what they're doing before they actually do it, and then we can go meet them there with that A-10, those bombs and the guns and get rid of them and then take them out. That's what we want to do. So they're very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too, and I think that they've been able to do some of that, and I think they've been valuable already. So one problem that we have, and we've talked about this, is that our government doesn't really seem to be all that interested in keeping us safe. And if some of this information was not being collected and gathered and watched and deciphered by GhostSec, I don't know that it would be being done at all.
Well, what's the number one responsibility of the government?
To keep me safe.
To keep us all safe.
Right.
And that's listen, people, that's safe from foreign threat and from domestic threat.
Right.
And again, Dr. A always says, we're never going to be beaten by a foreign group of individuals or nations that band together. The only way the United States will come tumbling down and collapse and split up into 3 or 4 different smaller countries is through heinous treason, which is what you've got going on right now.
Yeah, I think that's why so many people are suspicious with the connection between Ghost Security Group and the government, and that's going to be our last question. So we'll move on to number 2.
Okay.
So the second question was, my concern is it's intended to track ordinary citizens that support Op ISIS, which was he covered in his first answer. But he goes on to say, I understand the concerns. Let's narrow the focus down to something we can easily digest so that we can analyze the situation. Let's say this week we get one single report from the tool. Let's say the user was not behind a VPN, so we have their true, honest-to-God IP and could identify their location. Let's say they reported the website, and then he names the Isdarat website. Isdarat, thank you. That is a commonly known ISIS website to us through the tool. We are going to do, what are we going to do now? We have no online username to tie the IP info to. We don't know if the person is involved in Anonymous. We don't know if they're an upstanding citizen or they're part of ISIS. The only concrete fact from the submission are an ISIS link is being submitted, and we have an IP from where it came. No, not really a whole lot you can do with that. I'm not so sure about that one, but my husband's in IT. I talked to him. He was like, well, yeah. So now if there had been a virus or a rootkit, which is more technical terms really for just kind of malware, and in there we could sneak around their hard drive. Absolutely, we could be looking for Twitter handles or something to tie to their IP address. But it has been proven now that the tool doesn't do that, as you'll see in the next question. And as I said previously, this is being designed for their internal use. There's no need to track our own people. We were just playing with the idea of a tool and seeing if it would be useful.
I think that you've got to be leery of everybody. And one of the first things that I told you when we were together the first time on the radio was Red Nation Rising has been infiltrated. Conservative Facebook friends group has been infiltrated. The United States of America has been infiltrated by ISIS, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, cultural Marxists. saying it ain't so, Joe, but I hate to tell you this, people. It is so. So you've got to be vigilant. Trust, but verify was the advice we were given by your favorite president, Ronald Reagan, right?
Yes, he is. Yes, my favorite modern president. So we talked about at the end of the show last week, better safe than sorry, right?
Correct.
Right. So we're going to get into that a little bit more now. So number 3, what is your response to anonymous assertions that there is a Trojan horse malware may be included? They actually admit in their answer, it is wise to be extremely cautious when dealing with suspicious links and or software from people you don't know. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with warning the public to be careful. Well, that's great because that's what we were doing, right?
Correct.
We get it. Do your homework. Anyone can run the app through their local malware virus detectors and check it out before they run it. There are also plenty of free online virus malware detectors that allow you to upload an EXE file to check. When participating in this kind of activity, fighting ISIS and working with an underground community, it is wise to question your own team as well. When I was asked to test the application, my first response was also, I'm not running that bleep until I test it.
Right, exactly.
I checked it myself before running it on my own system. We have been encouraging someone to crack the application open themselves instead of perpetuating these fear-based claims of malware, but nobody would. Finally, yesterday, someone decompiled and looked and confirmed there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. We've been telling people the whole time it's clean as a whistle. It's a very simple app with an entry form to paste a link and submit and click a submit button. It took longer to get the logos for the various social networks and get the layout to work than the actual coding of the activity. It really couldn't be a more harmless app. Well, you know, if you developed it in C+, it probably was hard to work with, but we won't go there. But if, you know, one thing that I will say is since he's answered these questions, it has been decompiled some more by people outside of the group or not connected with the group. And there were some, and I picked this up online and on Twitter, there was some code that was identified as keylogging code, but it was admitted that it didn't seem to be going anywhere. So even though there was some keylogging happening there, which is, you know, like malware does, it logs your keystrokes to steal your passwords and things like that, but it logs them and sends them somewhere. So not really sure why that code is there, but it was confirmed that the code wasn't going anywhere. But I think that it's a concern for me that it's doing it at all.
It should be a concern. I don't trust most of the people I come in contact with, and these anons should be the same way. Yes, you have to develop camaraderie with the people that are in your squadron, so to speak, because you put your life in their hands, and they put you ask them to put their life in your hands. So you have to trust them eventually, but you've got to be very, very careful, especially in this virtual world, which I'm just now becoming more attuned to because of you and Stacy and JD, all the stuff that happens out there that I don't get a chance to really see all that often, but it can be, the vitriol can be very ugly. So you got to know who you're dealing with. And again, what these people are doing is so valuable to the war against Islam and the ideas contained within Islam. We have to eventually trust them to a certain degree, but again, verify.
Yes, absolutely. Always trust but verify, and better safe than sorry. You know, if you think that, and I would say this about any program, there's actually a website that I use to cut video and audio for our shows.
Uh-huh.
And every time I use it, I end up with, my virus scan says it's not malware, but that it's not wanted.
Right.
So they're dropping that. I won't be using that site again because I've picked up the pattern now. But they're dropping something on my computer. And anytime you run across anything like that, or anytime you're suspicious of something like that, there are sites that you can go to download executables that are safe. CNET is a good one. But you should always be cautious about what you're downloading onto your computer. Always, always, always. And never assume that it's safe. Because if you get a Trojan horse and you get malware, then your entire world could be turned over to someone else without you even knowing it. So, again, another two sides of the story, but since that update came back out, I wanted to kind of include it. There's been different people could decompile this program and really kind of given different reports on it, which is, really typical in environments like that, and it depends on what you run it through and what you're looking for and those sorts of things. So, on to the next question. Twitter Talk is it's bypassing a VPN to reveal a real IP. Did I understand that correctly? Is that true? The answer is, I suppose, is that because the app operates in front of your VPN on top of your machine instead of behind the VPN through a website, that your VPN could be rendered useless. That probably wouldn't take much effort to code, but it's just not in there. And that has not been confirmed, and the people that have decompiled and looked for that have not found that particular. So his answer to that kind of holds up with what I've seen.
Right.
Unless Comedy knows something different, and if you do, please put it in the chat room. That probably, let's see. I'm no coder, but I think when our website receives the submission, it still only sees whatever IP is being sent after your network card. So if you're behind a VPN, I think we're still getting that information. Well, that's kind of scary.
Right.
And again, if we have your IP, there's not much we could do with it other than show that someone at 123 Main Street submitted an ISIS link. In its current state, the tool does not query your hardware for information about your connection and is no more harmless than going to a website and submitting a form.
I find that hard to believe. I think that's the suspect answer to me right there. Again, I don't trust very few people do I trust, and I have to have witnessed their actual behavior before I give them my trust. But anything you do on your computer, I think, is discoverable.
Right, and I think this is why I wanted to replay the Book of Beaker, because I think it's kind of like a little bit like the NSA program. I don't want the government knowing. I don't want to hand over my IP to a government contractor. I just don't.
Of course not.
Yeah, and they might not know who I am until they get my IP. But once they get my IP address, they can certainly find out who I am.
Exactly. Exactly. That's very scary.
Right, yeah. And I understand that he's saying there's not much that we could do with that. Well, if you're connected to the government, there's a lot you could do with it. And if you turn it over to the NSA, there's any number of things that they could do with it. So,
right, it runs the gamut from innocent activity all the way to the potentially extremely harmful to you personally.
Right, and I'm going to start right here and say that this does not mean that anybody, and I am not trying to say that anyone associated with the GhostSec group or their contractor has any nefarious intentions whatsoever. That's not for me to say. I don't know that. I don't know these guys. I would not say that about anyone. However, our government, at this moment in time, I probably would say that about.
Exactly. I don't trust them at all.
Right. And so we're going to get into that a little bit in question number 7. So number 5 was the Kronos spokesperson we talked about last week. Michael Smith was offering an API to Anons who wanted to code their own integration. And I asked, isn't that a similar or the same tracking possible through an API? And the answer is Mr. Smith's verbiage may have been inaccurate. He's not a coder. We were tossing around the idea of making the code itself entirely available, not just an API, if that would settle everyone's fears about the security of the app. An API is only a way to interface with an existing application and wouldn't give complete transparency. So if the app was harvesting info from your hard drive and network, a public API would not help. Just like Twitter, there's an API to interface with Twitter that doesn't deal at all with IP information, but your IP address are still being logged by their servers. So basically, it was a roundabout way of giving the same answer that Tor gave last week, which is, yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. But the other thing is that I thought it was kind of funny that he used Twitter as an example, because the Twitter API is notorious for being horrible.
Exactly. It sure is.
It is.
Let's talk to Stacy and JD about that.
Yeah. The Twitter API is just really hard to work with. And anybody that's done any kind of web development or anything like that knows that they have one of the worst APIs in the business. So I thought it was funny that he used Twitter as an example. But outside the humor of that, the answer was really, in the end, very similar to the answer that Tor gave, which is that there's not a lot of difference. It's 6 to 1, half a dozen of another with the API, but what they were actually throwing around within the group was making the code available. So I would encourage them to do that. I think that if they want to be transparent, that's probably the best thing for them to do. To just go ahead and make that code available, like the way that Anons usually do, and we talked about that with our answers from Tor last week. Make the code available, let everybody take a look at it if you want people to use it, and then we'll all feel a lot better about it.
Will they be transparent like the current presidential administration is the most transparent administration ever? We know that's not true.
Yeah, don't even get me started on that. But, yeah. And I think that, again, I'm not going to put the onus on these guys that are working for this group, because they're not in charge. And you know very well that when you're a government contractor, even you're not in charge. The government is in charge. So if we want to blame someone for all this, blame the government.
Well, the government is, the government is the problem. You realize that. It's not the solution to our problems. The government, most of the times, is the problem. And that's why we have to rein them in. That's why you got to listen to Office Hours with Dr. A, so I can educate you with the truth about the government and all the people involved in it, so you can really know what's going on. You have the proper perspective from which to judge the governmental actors' behavior. That's why it's important.
Yes, absolutely. And so we've got 2 more questions that we need to get through, and we only have just a few more minutes. So number 6 was, I think the spy on ISIS instead of bringing them down is inaccurate. Can you, in your own words, explain? He said, well, there's obviously 2 differences of opinion on this one. Yes, there are. There's the idea that by removing the sites and accounts as fast as possible, you can disrupt the flow of propaganda, interfere with the spreading of their messages, and hopefully keep someone on the fence from being completely radicalized by the exposure of their propaganda. Shutting down their sites and social accounts has certainly made it more difficult for them, and at times we have seen them publicly express their frustrations at having to rebuild their friends list and having to keep uploading. So is it working? Perhaps. The flip side to this is having the ability to gather intelligence. The real jihadis, not the tens of thousands of fanboys that keep popping up. Now, I'm going to stop right there and just remind everybody that one of those fanboys pulled off a major terrorist attack, the biggest terrorist attack since 9/11 in California. You're not seeing the major players nearly as much on Twitter anymore, and after Junaid Hussain was droned, many of the key players said, F this, I'm out. they're only moving farther away from social media, and it's getting harder and harder to find them. The information to find the information you need. We still prefer to keep the violence off of social media. The world deserves a place to hang out without videos of beheadings and autoplay on their thread list. So we'll advocate for shutting down those types of sites, but the private jihad forums, onion sites, and certain Twitter accounts, you can learn a lot about how they operate, who's running the show, how the money flows, so on and so forth. The jihadis and fanboys are stupid, and it's a matter of time before one of them can't resist bragging publicly about something that is supposed to be secret, and they spill their beans. That's the moment that lives are saved. Shutting them down as soon as they pop up keeps them busy and is annoying, but if they stick around long enough to run their mouths, then we're able to do something far more powerful, like get them arrested, droned, or whatever. Now, I don't like the drone program, and I'll just go ahead and say that out loud. In addition, there are many people in the group currently fighting ISIS right now that have fake ISIS accounts that are trying to establish relationships with jihadis. Oops, I might not have should have said that out loud. We've all been there, so people working very hard to get inside these forums, chat rooms, private groups, etc., to gather intelligence are pulled out. The rug is pulled out from under them when they're getting close. I don't know about that, but I do know that these two that pulled off the attack in California were radicalized online, and that the FBI had known about them. And if the FBI had known about them, if the purpose is to gather intelligence, to learn about people so that we can stop them, if the FBI knew about them, why didn't they stop them before they did it?
The radicalization begins the moment they open up that Quran and accept it as being from a deity named Allah, the moon god.
Right.
That's when the radicalization takes place.
Right.
So I always say we are at war against Islam, and people think I'm crazy. No, it is about Islam. And just because you have supposedly good Muslims who go to church, the mosque every Sunday or whatever, they call to prayer or whatever, and they don't go out and engage in this type of heinous behavior, they're still not stopping it. They still may be funding it. Not everybody in the United States is a warrior. Some of them are sheep, but they are aiding and abetting the warriors, the wolves out there, to engage in this jihad.
Right,
and until we get serious about this, we're going to have a horrible world war that will continue until we get absolutely serious about this. The first thing we have to realize, the first step to winning this war, is to realize Barack Hussein Obama is a traitor. He's committing treason. He's aiding and abetting the enemy.
So I gotta move because I won't get to his last answer, and I don't want to do that to them. But I will say the final paragraph here is, finally, if you think back in time, the Nazis were only defeated once their codes were broken. That's not necessarily true. They were also defeated because they tried to fight on too many fronts, but we'll just move on. So I asked him about the conspiracy theory that I had, and he gave the exact same answer that Tor gave. So I'm not going to go into that. They basically said, no conspiracy here, move on. And both of them told me that. So there was total agreement between the two groups on that. So I'm going to move on to the question about, is there anything else that you'd like for people to know? He would like for people to know that the alleged association has been blown out of proportion. I've even seen recent comparisons to, he notes a hacker named Sabu that was an FBI informant. Ghost Security Group, as soon as the word federal showed up in association with Ghost Security Group, the fear and disinformation spread like wildfire. All that's happened with us is that we've finally been able to build up enough trust by consistently providing solid intelligence that some people are more willing to accept our information and utilize it to make decisions on the ground. It took a year of hard work. It was frustrating having all this priority information at hand and no way of guaranteeing that it was going to get seen by anyone who could use it. We now have someone, who is Mr. Smith, who recognized our abilities and decided to help us build and, more importantly, keep some relationships so that we wouldn't continue to be hampered by obstacles. Our team, our mission, and our methodologies have not changed, aside from the fact that any information we give to fight ISIS has been acquired through verifiable legal means. You can't ask police to go break down a jihadi's door. He goes on. I won't get into that. No, he says no one's on payroll. We all still have our day jobs, and no one is giving us orders. We may sometimes be asked to assist in researching a person or topic, like helping to locate a hostage or seeing if we can find any chatter. He goes on, and maybe I'll tweet the rest of these answers out because apologies, I'm out of time. We're running into JD and Stacy's time, and we're gonna have to say, but that was the biggest part of his answer, and my first thought when I saw that was they're using these guys. So I'm going to apologize for JD and Stacy. I'm going to skip the post-roll commercial, and we're going to get out of here. And if there's anything else to cover, we'll cover it next week. JD and Stacy, I'm so sorry that we were late. Say goodnight, Dr. A.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Go Suck. Next week.